Welcome back to my Celica project. Today, we'll be removing the spark plugs and turning this engine by hand to see if it's seized. This car's been sitting for about a decade, and before I even think about bumping the starter or adding fuel, I need to know one thing. Is the engine still free, or did time finally catch up to it? I've been dreading this step because once we find out, there's no guessing anymore. This is the point where the project either moves forward or gets a whole lot more complicated. So let's dive in and see what we're working with. In the Celica, we've got the 3S GTE. Starting in the mid-80s, it's been in continuous production for 21 years and spanned 5 generations. What we're working on here is the middle of the range, the 3rd Gen 3S GTE. It originally came in the 94 to 99 Celica GT4 and the MR2 Turbo, which is the reason we chose it for this car. Unfortunately, neither of those were cars that they sold in the US. Subsequently, parts may be a little difficult to find. However, I'm very familiar with this power plant. I've had 2 Celicas, an MR2, and a RAV4 that all had different versions of this engine. And the majority of parts we'll need, I think I can pull off donor engines that I have sitting in the shop. For everything else, I'll have to scavenge for parts. So as we go along in the videos, I'll be making a list of everything I need to replace. Now, in the mid-2000s, I actually built this motor, so there's a fair number of aftermarket goodies and a lot of machine work that I'm hoping to preserve. Now, prior to this car, normally how I approach a build was, I would have a car and I would have a goal. That goal might be a specific power level, a specific look, or maybe just specific handling characteristics. But because the Celica was just my daily driver, there was never really a plan. It was mostly built with leftover parts from my other projects. And the same is true of this block. At nearly 200,000 miles, the MR2 was getting a little tired, and the 2nd Gen 3S GT that was in it needed a refresh. But when I got an offer for the MR2 that was just a little too good to pass up, it left me with an engine half assembled and without a place to put it. So, like any irresponsible car enthusiast, I decided to mod the daily. I took out my perfectly healthy, relatively low mileage 5S FE and replaced it with a 3rd Gen 3S. But even though I built the block and upgraded the valve train, this was still just a daily driver for me. For drivability, I left the stock fuel system, stock ECU, and stock cams, and spent years puttering around in the most overbuilt 250 horsepower car I've ever had. Because this particular engine came out of the GT4, it's got the top mount water-to-air intercooler. So the first step today is going to be to get that removed. And because there's a lot of animal and plant debris in here, I'm going to shove a rag into the outlet of the turbo so nothing falls in while we're working. And on the left of the engine, there's some ducting that runs from one of the vents on the hood and is actually used to cool where the wiring harness comes above the cam gears. It's held on with 2 10mm bolts that are threaded directly into the valve cover. And with the vent removed, what I'm actually going to do with these bolts and all the other bolts on the valve cover is thread them back in so there's no question as to where those bolts were placed and where they go back into. The ignition wires themselves are actually held inside this plastic track, and it's held in with 3 10mm bolts. Rather than unclip the plastic track and take it apart, I'm just going to unbolt it, pull the spark plug wires, and move the entire assembly out of the way. Now in Texas, we have a non-aggressive type of wasp called a mud dauber. They're really important in the ecology, and they're very friendly to gardeners, but their nests are made of these hollow mud tubes, and when they dry out, they become brittle and leave bits everywhere. Unfortunately for me, this 3S GTE seemed to be a hotspot for them. I had already removed several dozen when I was pressure washing the car, and it looks like I may just be scratching the surface, because there were several underneath the intercooler as well. So I'm going to try my best not to disturb any of these nests until everything is sealed up and I'm ready to move it. But the ones that do get disturbed, I'm going to try and make sure we vacuum up all the bits so that they don't fall into someplace critical. And just like our ducting, I'm going to go ahead and thread the screws back in for our ignition wire track. Now with all those pieces out of the way, we can finally take a look at some of the components that will give us a clue into the condition, history, and future viability of this engine. I'll skip past some of the video removing the spark plugs, but we'll pause to take a look at each one. Starting with cylinder 1, this one actually looks like the best case scenario. There's no oil on the plug, which means the tube seals are in good shape when the engine was running. There's no burn mark on the insulator tip below the center electrode, which means the ignition temperatures were not getting too hot. There's no excessive soot or black color on the ground electrode, which means the fuel mixture wasn't rich, and neither electrode was melted, so the gap is likely correct and the plugs and components are probably pretty secure. From here we'll jump ahead to where we've got all the spark plugs loose, and we'll take a look at cylinder 2. Here our spark plug looks nearly identical to cylinder 1, with the exception of I see some wetness on the threads. This can indicate that a tube seal is starting to go, but it's very light, so for now we're just going to keep an eye on it. I'm not going to add valve cover gasket and tube seals to the list unless the other cylinders look worse than this. And moving right along, we'll pull the plug from cylinder 3. And the plug in 3 looks nearly identical to cylinder 1. The electrodes, insulator, and tip color all indicate healthy combustion in this chamber before it was sparked. And finally, cylinder 4 and our last spark plug. Once again, a healthy looking spark plug with all the hallmarks of good combustion. And now that the spark plugs have been removed, we can grab a scope and take a look at the top of the piston inside each cylinder. Taking a physical look inside each cylinder will give us some vital clues about the health of this engine. Specifically, we want to be on the lookout for signs of wear or damage to the cylinder walls, carbon buildup, or head gasket leaks. And I'm going to pause the scope video here, but this is very encouraging. The valve is partially open and there are no deposits on it. Similarly, the top of the cylinder looks very clean and very little carbon buildup. In fact, all around the outside edge of the piston it looks silver. This is likely due to the fact that on this car I ran meth injection. When I built this engine, I drilled a hole into each runner on the intake manifold and threaded in a nozzle. Whenever the turbo pressure would exceed 15 psi, a pressure switch would turn on and an atomized mixture of water and methanol would be introduced into the cylinder mixed with the incoming air. Because I was running the stock ECU, this was primarily a means of preventing detonation at higher boost levels. But a side effect is that it actually kind of steam cleaned the inside of the engine. And it seems all 4 nozzles were flowing pretty evenly because the results look similar in all 4 cylinders. If you look closely, you can also see the cylinder walls still have a good crosshatch and are in great shape. And this is another instance of admitting I was wrong and credit where credit is due. The folks at G&G Performance Engines in Tomball were the ones who actually did all the machine work on the block and head when I built this motor. This was the first 3S GTE that they had done, but they had a lot of time with 2JZ builds, another Yamaha-influenced collaboration with similar architecture. And of course, being a 20-year-old engineering student, talking to a man who had built successful race engines longer than I had been alive, I nearly made the mistake of letting my education stop me from learning. I went into this build with a lot of research on what other successful builders had done with their MR2s. And there were 2 things the owner of the shop and I argued with. The first was the hone. Their recommendation for the cylinder hone with my rings was a lot less polished than many of the other builds on the forums and community were recommending. But ultimately he convinced me that the hone they suggested would retain an oil film and last longer. The second was going with a fast break-in for the engine. I think in both cases, time has proved them right, as both practices are pretty common for fresh builds on these motors now. Now this was a couple of decades ago, so I'm not sure if they're still around, but if I do end up needing a rebuild and am going with another 3S GTE, those guys are going to be my first call. And I'll let the video continue to play, but as far as an initial visual inspection, I really could not have hoped for much better, until I got to cylinder 4. Somewhere along the way I had dropped a little bit of dirt from one of those mud dauber nests into the spark plug well for cylinder 4. So nothing to it but to get all those little bits out of there. So the first thing is to cover up all the other spark plug wells to make sure that I don't drop anything else in. And from there I'm going to get my vacuum back out and use a small tube attached to the end to suck out all the debris inside the cylinder. And I'll speed through it here, but there was a lot of vacuuming to get every little bit off the top of that piston. Now, as happy as I was about the condition of all the cylinders, it still needs to be stated that if you let your engine sit for an extended period of time, like, I don't know, say a decade, you're still going to want to make the effort to try and lubricate as many surfaces as you can. A popular choice for this is fogging oil. It comes in an aerosol can and you can just stick it in a spark plug tube and spray. That's not something I normally keep on the shelf, but something I usually have in ready supply is Marvel's Mystery Oil. It's a very thin weight oil additive and it does a good job of freeing stuck components. So I've loaded up the oil can with a little bit of Marvel's Mystery Oil and added a flexible spout, and I'm coating the cylinder walls all around as best I can, and I'm going to let it sit overnight before we come back to the engine tomorrow. And through the magic of video, we're back a day later to turn this engine over. It's the first time I've had the car up on the lift since I brought it into the garage, and I can already see my list of needed parts is going to grow, starting with a lower timing cover. It looks like some critter has chewed through part of this one, and that's certainly not ideal, but it will give me a look at the sprocket on the oil pump while we're turning. At this age, the timing belt will need to be replaced regardless of the mileage, but for now we can use this window to see the condition of the timing belt and make sure that it's turning both the oil pump and the water pump. There's also more mud dauber nests, cobwebs, and what I think used to be a bird's nest behind the front axle. But those are all problems for another day. Today, we're trying to make sure that this engine will spin. Now normally when turning over an engine by hand, you would remove the belts attached to the crank so you don't misdiagnose a seized engine for just a stuck accessory. And for that same reason, you'd also take it out of gear, which we've already done. But after having looked at all the cylinders, I'm very confident we're going to be successful today. And it's hidden by the body of the car, but there are some mud dauber nests on the belt I can't reach by hand. So I'm hopeful turning the belt will break those free as the belt rolls over that power steering pulley. And this rotation feels very smooth. All the spark plug wells are open, so there's no major resistance like you would get if the combustion chambers were still sealed. And the gear on the oil pump also looks like it's turning. On this generation of the 3S GT, there are oil squirters under the pistons, but I don't think I'm turning this crank anywhere near fast enough to generate the sort of pressure it would take to do any significant lubrication on the rotating assembly. And on top of that, all the fluids in the car are well past their change intervals. But now that we've verified that our engine will turn, we can move forward with the rest of the build. So today, we end the video on a success, and add a 3rd gen lower timing cover to the parts list. So join me next time as we start cleaning out all the plant and animal debris and begin getting this engine ready to start.